welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture this. You're the student, and I'm your wanderer philosopher. Together, we're going on a rather grim journey back through the charred, desolate ruins of a 7th century city-state. What we're exploring today isn't just some historical curiosity, it's a profound Socratic dialogue brought to life. We're literally going to examine the very architecture of deception and how an entire society was engineered to completely eclipse its own soul. Let's get into it. So, tell me, student, what actually happens to a soul when the consequences of its actions just vanish? Poof, gone. I want you to hold this dark Socratic hook in your mind, because this question sits at the very center of an epic, timeless conflict. It's the eternal war between our internal, guiding reason and our basest, most primal appetites. Think about it. When the fear of punishment is totally removed, does a person remain just? Or does the soul begin to devour itself? Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, the stage of counterfeits. Our story really kicks off with the arrival of two figures who built a highly sophisticated laboratory for social engineering. They called it the alchemical theater. Now, to understand how this trap worked, we've got to look at its architects. First, you have the wizard. He provided the structural glue of the illusion, the complex alchemical mechanics that made the fake seem totally real. On the other side, we have the jester. He used weaponized prose, this salty, manipulative river of speech, to weave a web of false intimacy, entirely disarming the audience. It's wild because this brilliantly illustrates exactly how deceptive power is constructed in the real world. It relies absolutely, entirely on performative illusions to make you drop your guard, replacing genuine human connection with a manufactured, toxic dependency. Part 2, the tyrant's ring. This brings us to the artifacts used in this theater, which strongly echo the ancient legend of the Ring of Gyges. You know the original myth, right? A lowly shepherd makes an accidental discovery of a ring of invisibility, completely shielding him from the external consequences of his actions. But on our stage of counterfeits, two highly esteemed figures, a knight and a priest, entered willingly. They actively sought out the Ring of Invisibility and the Shadow Ring. They mistakenly believed these predatory artifacts were tools of heroic passion or even spiritual authority. But in reality, the knight and priest just wanted a cheat code to bypass the king's order. They craved the illusion of power so they could completely escape the heavy, day-to-day burdens of living a virtuous life. Now, what's really interesting here is the profound tragic irony of their choice. These magical rings didn't grant them true mastery over their world at all. Quite the opposite. Instead, these predatory artifacts acted like corrosive acids upon their egos. By seeking a shortcut through alchemical trickery, they actually accelerated their own unproductive stagnation. The tools they thought would literally make them gods simply dissolved their personal integrity. It left them anchored to the floor by the heavy, invisible chains of their own indifference. Part 3, Disharmony of the Soul. So by choosing that shortcut of deception, by completely stripping away the consequences of their actions, these individuals severed the tie to their own rationality. Socrates formally defines this resulting condition as a disharmony of the soul. Basically, it's a state of profound spiritual enslavement. You see, when internal reason is lost, the individual doesn't actually become free. No, they inevitably surrender to their basest desires. And the absolutely crucial point is this: a soul without reason cannot sustain itself. It violently collapses its own personal integrity. The ruler and the ruled alike become tyrants, trapped in a thresher of their own making. Part 4, Hollowed Out by Appetite. Having explored the philosophy, we must now shift our gaze to the grim, tragic reality of what this disharmony actually did to the everyday citizens. Let's see how this builds, because this transformation wasn't just an accident. It was a systematic, 3-step alchemical trap unleashed upon the entire populace. Step 1, the jester's weaponized prose wove that web of false intimacy we talked about, stripping away healthy social conventions. Step 2, he deployed the verse of command. This acted as a direct psychic harness, locking the audience into a hypnotic, obedient state. And finally, Step 3, the citizens were transformed into hollowed-out puppets. Their internal reason was literally scooped out, turning once virtuous subjects into disposable, reasonless political assets. It directly proves that disharmony of the soul ultimately erases the self.
And here is the brutal manifestation of that rot. Stripped of all reason, these puppets were now driven by a primal, dangerous hunger. They became trapped in a closed circuit of psychic starvation. Because of this, the community actually began to cannibalize its own spirit. The sources note that neighbors truly became beasts in the darkness. I want to be very clear here. These monstrous night creatures prowling the streets, they were not foreign invaders. No way. They were birthed directly from the unchecked hunger and rot of a populace that had traded its personal integrity for a cheap illusion.
Part 5. The Great Clock Strikes.
An empire built on the shimmering veil of a foolish fire and mercury-soaked lies just cannot last forever. Objective reality always demands its due. And the failure of this illusion wasn't some gradual fade-out. It was signaled by the striking of the great clock of consequence. It sounded with a heavy, metallic clink of duty. Imagine that sound. It is the sudden, inescapable, crushing return of reality. The play acting is officially over. The consequences that the Ring of Invisibility promised to banish? Yeah, they've finally come to collect.
At the exact moment of this final bow, the entire theater collapses. The mercury-soaked foundations of the stage literally ignite into a final crown of flame. It is a scene of total apocalyptic finality. And the fire, well, it doesn't discriminate. This destruction thoroughly, entirely consumes both the manipulator who wove the lies and the manipulated who so willingly swallowed them. The whole shebang, gone. So we are left to look upon the Socratic aftermath. Of the shepherd's ambition in the jester's magnificent stage of counterfeits, only a charred circle remains. A ghostly tittering echoes through the ruins, kind of mocking the folly of those who thought they could outsmart the king's order. This right here is the ultimate lesson of our Socratic dialogue today. Any power that is breathed out through deception inevitably destroys the very house it built. It must, and always will, consume the world it attempted to control. Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Tell me, when the great clock finally strikes in your own life, bringing that heavy clink of duty and consequence, will your soul resonate with the clear, strong tone of internal reason, or will it merely give off the empty, reasonless echo of a hollowed puppet? The choice between appetite and integrity is yours and yours alone to make. Thank you for learning with me today.